The year was 1893. A 12-year-old boy from Germany lost both of his parents and became an orphan at a very young age. Whatever little money he inherited from them was later stolen while he was traveling. In just a few years, he had lost everything: family, security, and wealth. But there was one thing he never lost: his deep passion for watches. That passion would one day help him build the world's most legendary watch brand, Rolex. After his parents' death, Hans Wilsdorf was sent to a boarding school. His relatives sold his parents' business, leaving him with no emotional or financial support. His future looked dark and uncertain, but during his school years, Hans became friends with a boy from Switzerland who often spoke about the Swiss watchmaking industry. These conversations sparked something inside him. Hans slowly realized that watchmaking was his true calling. At the age of 19, in 1900, Hans left Germany and moved to Switzerland. There, he found a job at a watchmaking company where his task was to check the accuracy of hundreds of watches every single day. This repetitive work built an obsession within him, not with luxury, but with precision. He started believing that a watch should be accurate, reliable, and durable, not just beautiful. In 1903, Hans decided to move to London to explore better opportunities. But during his journey, tragedy struck again. The money he had inherited from his parents, around 3,300 German gold marks, was stolen. Once again, he was left with nothing. Still, giving up was never an option. In London, he took up a job in a watch company's sales and marketing department. Over the next 2 years, he learned not only about manufacturing, but also about customer behavior. He noticed something important. Most watch companies were focused on fancy designs, while customers actually wanted simple, accurate, and long-lasting watches. At the age of 24, Hans decided to start his own watch business, but he lacked capital. To solve this, he partnered with his brother-in-law, who invested money in the business. In 1905, this partnership led to the formation of Wilsdorf and Davis. Their initial focus was on pocket watches, especially for travelers who needed accurate time to catch trains and buses. Their first product, the Portfolio pocket watch, was compact, reliable, and premium, and it became a success. Even though pocket watches were selling well, Hans strongly believed that wristwatches were the future. At that time, wristwatches were considered feminine and were not taken seriously by men. Hans wanted to change this mindset. In Britain, he noticed that both men and women loved wearing bracelets. Using this insight, he launched gold and silver wristwatches designed like bracelets and marketed them as bracelet watches. This strategy worked, and wristwatches slowly gained acceptance among men. Hans also understood the power of branding. Most watches carried the manufacturer's name, but he wanted something unique, short, and easy to pronounce in every language. After experimenting with hundreds of names, one word stood out: Rolex. He trademarked the name in 1908. Although Rolex watches were gaining popularity, accuracy was still a major challenge. Wristwatches were small, and no one had managed to make them as precise as pocket watches. Hans decided to solve this problem himself. He studied horology deeply and collaborated with expert watchmakers. Eventually, Rolex developed its own movement and submitted it for official testing in Switzerland. In 1910, Rolex became the first wristwatch in the world to receive a chronometer certificate for accuracy. This achievement transformed Rolex's reputation across Europe. By 1914, the company was growing rapidly. But then came World War I. The British government imposed heavy export duties, making Rolex watches extremely expensive overnight. Sales collapsed. To survive, Hans moved the company to Switzerland and officially renamed it Rolex Watch Company Limited. During the war, Hans noticed that soldiers needed wristwatches to coordinate attacks and movements. Pocket watches were impractical on the battlefield. Rolex began producing strong, readable wristwatches for soldiers, which boosted demand even during wartime. This shift permanently changed how the world viewed wristwatches. However, wristwatches had another major flaw. Dust and water could easily damage them. Hans set out to solve this problem. In 1926, Rolex introduced a revolutionary waterproof watch using a screw-down case design. Because it could survive underwater like an oyster, it was named the Rolex Oyster. To prove its waterproof capability, Hans used bold marketing strategies. The watch was showcased in water-filled display tanks, and famous personalities wore it during extreme conditions. This made Rolex Oyster famous worldwide as the first truly waterproof watch, yet Hans was still not satisfied. Mechanical watches required manual winding, and if the crown wasn't sealed properly, water could enter. After years of experimentation, Rolex invented the perpetual rotor, an automatic winding system powered by the movement of the wearer's wrist. This innovation led to the creation of the Rolex Oyster Perpetual, making Rolex a technological leader in the watch industry. The journey was not easy. World War II disrupted global trade, and Hans also suffered personal losses, including the death of his wife. Despite everything, he continued working with the same discipline and perfectionism that defined his life. In 1945, Rolex launched the Datejust, the world's first automatic watch with a date display. Later, Rolex introduced legendary models like the Explorer for mountaineers, the GMT Master for pilots, and the Deep Sea Special, which survived the deepest point of the ocean. In 1960, at the age of 79, Hans Wilsdorf passed away, but he left behind more than a company. He left behind a legacy. From poverty and loss to innovation and perfection, Hans proved that greatness is not inherited, it is built. That is the real story of Rolex,